to spiders and mold.
Well, without any hesitation at all, I would say you're a tunnel like mine. And speaking of tunnels, Canada's oldest railway tunnel in Brockville is soon to become a tourist attraction. Fresh air and money are being pumped into that remnant from the heyday of the Iron Horse. And Peter this week braved its haunting and mysterious blackness.
Sure did.
Will you?
I'm here in Brockville at the southern entrance to Canada's oldest railway tunnel. Now, there hasn't been anybody in there for years. It's been all closed up. But this summer, tourists will have a chance to go inside for the first time in many years, inside Canada's oldest railway tunnel. Okay, fellas, open her up. Open the solid oak doors to the Brockville Railway Tunnel, and you open the doors on 134 years of history. Construction on the tunnel began 21 years before a single spike was driven for the Canadian Pacific Railway. It travels 1,730 feet from the St. Lawrence Seaway, under Brockville City Hall, under Victoria Street, to the northern edge of downtown, where it once connected to the main rail line.
It was built between the years 1854 and 1860. It took 6 years to build this tunnel. It was built by English, or designed by English engineers, and the thing that I find interesting about it is the fact that probably it should never have been built to start with. It would have been much more economical and much more sensible, in my opinion, to begin where we are here now and run the railway along the river to the creek, and then along the creek around to the hill, and end up at the same point where the tunnel ends up.
Why would they have built a tunnel that you're figuring they probably didn't even need?
Well, according to the history books, it appears that the English designers and engineers of the day felt that you really didn't have a railway if you didn't have a tunnel. And so the tunnel was built. It was plagued by construction and financial problems, but eventually, 6 years after it started, it was completed.
City workers are busy repairing the tunnel floors so that tourists can venture inside the southern section of the structure and get a first-hand feel for the starring role the tunnel played in the industrial development of Brockville.
And this is a fine example of early engineering technology, and as well as being a very unique feature. There aren't too many communities that can boast they have a tunnel that runs 1/3 of a mile underneath their city street.
What is now Parkland was once Heartland. The big St. Lawrence Seaway ships steam past Brockville today, but back then they tied up here and loaded and unloaded goods that came from and went to the Ottawa Valley. They moved by railway car through the tunnel, which was then the focal point of the waterfront, to the main line. The last locomotive passed through the tunnel in 1954, but heritage devotees pushed for the restoration of the tunnel as a concrete link to the past.
It's part of all of us. It's part of the fabric that makes up Canada. And railroads are tremendously important to the development of this country. And this is a lasting piece of one of the earliest railroads to be developed in the country.
June the 10th or the 11th, when we'll be able to open the doors on a daily basis for the summer.
Oh, that's great.
You've seen a different kind of construction, the way they did.
Yes, this is the lower section, of course, and this is a masonry-lined section. You can see that the stonework is all hand-placed and mortared in place with the old type of lime mortar, and it's very interesting. As you move on further up, you're going to get into the area where you just see the bedrock, where the tunnel was blasted right through the solid bedrock.
Now, most tourists will only be able to inspect the first 80 feet of the tunnel. That's the only section that will be open this summer. But we've been allowed to take a special tour of the full length of the tunnel, so come along with us. See you later, fellas.
Have a nice trip.
Sure is dark in here. What you're looking at here are the massive air vents to the outside that allow the escape of built-up fumes and stale air out of the tunnel.
massive. They must be 50 or 60 feet high to the outside. Now what you're looking at here is just solid bedrock. So this is where the engineers had to blast through bedrock to complete the tunnel through this portion. Must have been amazing. Oh, you can see no one's explored these parts for many years. Oh, it's awful wet here, too. Daylight. This is where you come out of the railway tunnel. This is the north entrance of it on the north side of town, 1,730 feet away from where we went in. So after years of neglect, yet another piece of Canadian history is being preserved and polished for public showing. The country's first railway tunnel will likely never usher another locomotive along its subterranean length, but its walls will always echo the sounds of those bygone days.
Oh, you really went through there, eh? That was scary.
Well, it's very wet. It's very wet, and there have been all kinds of bats inside the tunnel while they were doing the restoration work, but I guess they scared them all out because when we went through, we didn't see any. But it'll be open all summer, that first 80 feet, for any tourists who want to go down and take it. It's really interesting to look at the different construction involved in the tunnel.
You probably scared them all out. Get ready to gear up when we come back. The curious fun of the real thing in pint-sized packages.